Hey, dear members of the Soul Stories family. Today we bring you a romantic love story that might just soften even the toughest hearts. So let's get started, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any meaningful stories. Seattle, one April night in 2025, rain fell relentlessly, as if the entire sky were weeping for Vivian Grant's losses. She stepped out of the King County Courthouse, her high heels caked with mud, her navy silk dress, the one she'd chosen to appear strong before her husband's lawyer, now soaked and clinging to her skin. The court had just ruled. She'd lost G-Tech, the company she'd spent 10 years building from a scribbled idea on a napkin. Michael, the husband she'd once loved blindly, had secretly transferred her shares to himself and his new lover, her former assistant, whom Vivian had trusted without question. She had nothing left. No company, no reputation, not even faith in herself. Vivian stood at the bus stop on Pine Avenue, a few blocks from the courthouse. She had no umbrella, no coat. The icy rain seeped through her dress, making her shiver uncontrollably. The dim streetlights cast a glow on her face, her sad brown eyes, her disheveled black hair sticking to her cheeks. She didn't cry, not because she was strong, but because her tears had run dry during long nights alone in a rented apartment. She just wanted to leave, to go anywhere, as long as it was away from this city that had once been her kingdom. The bus stop was deserted, with only an old sign listing routes and a few wet plastic chairs. Vivian hugged herself, trying to hold on to the last traces of warmth. She didn't know when the next bus would come, nor did she care. All she saw was a vast emptiness, the future she'd once envisioned, now reduced to shards. Where did I go wrong? She asked herself. But no answer ever came. Soft footsteps echoed through the rain. Vivian looked up, wary. A man appeared from around the corner, wearing a gray baseball cap, a plaid shirt, and faded jeans. He held a small umbrella, but didn't use it to shield himself, letting the rain soak his shoulders. He stopped a few steps away, his green eyes looking at her with genuine concern, free of judgment. Vivian tightened her grip, ready to brush him off if he tried to talk. She was too exhausted for empty platitudes, but he didn't say much. He took off his worn denim jacket, stepped forward, and gently draped it over her shoulders. "You look like you need it more than I do," he said, his voice low and warm, as if speaking to an old friend. Vivian froze, her lips parting, but no words coming out. The jacket still held his body's warmth, smelling faintly of fabric and wood, a stark contrast to the biting cold of the rain. She studied him, searching for any hint of ulterior motive, but found only a faint smile. Not dazzling, but enough to ease the darkness in her heart. "Thank you," Vivian whispered, her voice shaky from the cold and tangled emotions. She pulled the jacket tighter, as if it were a fragile shield against the world. The man nodded, then turned and walked away, his small umbrella tilted over his head. He vanished into the rain before she could ask his name or anything else. Only the steady patter of rain remained, and Vivian, for the first time that day, felt a tiny spark pierce her frozen heart. She sat on the plastic chair, the oversized jacket dwarfing her slender frame, but offering a strange sense of safety. She didn't know why such a small gesture made her want to cry. Perhaps because it was so unexpected, so sincere, in a world she'd grown used to deceit. Vivian gazed at the hazy road, where car lights streaked by like aimless beams. People like him don't last long, she thought, the bitter voice in her head reminding her that kindness often came with a price. The rain kept falling, but Vivian no longer shivered. She reached into her purse for her phone to check the bus schedule, but her fingers brushed a small piece of paper inside the jacket pocket. Frowning, she pulled it out. It was a folded note, its edges worn, with neat handwriting. Eli 206-5555012. Call if you need a computer fixed, or just to talk. Vivian read it again, disbelieving. He left his number, not to boast or demand anything, but as a simple, open invitation. She let out a small laugh, a faint sound blending with the rain. The smile startled her. How long had it been since she'd smiled so naturally? She clutched the note, unsure why she didn't throw it away. Perhaps because it was the only remnant of that strange moment when a stranger had seen her, Not Vivian Grant, the failed CEO, but just a person who needed warmth. In another corner of the city, Eli Turner stepped into his small apartment, his wet shoes leaving footprints on the old wooden floor. He hung his umbrella on a hook, peeled off his soaked shirt, and tossed it into the washer. The apartment was modest, with just enough room for a worn sofa, a desk cluttered with computer parts, and a few family photos on the wall. He poured a cup of cold coffee from the pot, sat down and looked out the window, where the rain still raged. Eli didn't dwell on what had happened. He'd seen the woman at the bus stop shivering and looking like she'd lost everything. He didn't know who she was, nor did he need to. He just couldn't walk by without doing something. She'll probably toss the jacket, he told himself, shrugging. That denim jacket had seen him through 3 winters. Losing it wasn't a big deal, but deep down he hoped she'd keep it. Not because he wanted to see her again, but because he believed a little warmth could sometimes pull someone out of the dark. He didn't know that at that moment, the note in the jacket pocket was in Vivian's hands, and their fates had just brushed against each other in a fleeting moment, like a raindrop hitting a lake, sending out ripples they couldn't yet see. Vivian stood as the bus's headlights flickered in the distance. She tucked the note into her dress pocket and pulled Eli's jacket tighter around her. The bus stopped, its doors opened, and she stepped aboard, carrying a feeling she couldn't name. Not hope, but something close. She didn't know where she was going, but for the first time in months, she felt she wasn't entirely alone. The next morning, faint sunlight slipped through gray clouds, illuminating the narrow Seattle street where Vivian woke in a modest hotel room. She sat on the edge of the bed, the stranger's denim jacket, Eli's, as the note had said, neatly folded on a chair. She'd meant to throw it out, but for some reason kept it. The note with his phone number lay on the table, its edges slightly creased from her restless fingers, touching it all night. Vivian stared at the number, her thumb hovering over her phone before pausing. Just to return the jacket, she told herself, though a doubtful voice in her head questioned whether anyone could be that kind without expecting something in return. She took a deep breath and dialed. The phone rang 3 times before a warm, low voice answered. "Hello, this is Eli." Vivian faltered, unused to starting a conversation without a clear purpose. "Hi, I'm the person from the bus stop last night. I want to return your jacket." On the other end, Eli let out a soft chuckle, so genuine it made her pause. "No rush. But if you want, I'm nearby. There's a little coffee shop on Pine, a few steps from the bus stop. You free?" Vivian hesitated. She could mail the jacket or just leave it somewhere. But something in his voice, unpushy, non-judgmental, made her nod, though he couldn't see. "Okay, I'll come." She hung up, put on a simple sweater and jeans, deliberately choosing clothes far removed from her former sharp CEO image. She held the denim jacket in her hands, a reminder that this was just a small errand, nothing more. The Bean and Breeze coffee shop was tucked into a street corner, its glass door fogged with steam and the air rich with the scent of roasted coffee. When Vivian pushed the door open, a wind chime tinkled, and she spotted Eli immediately. He sat at a table near the window, wearing a light blue shirt, a cup of black coffee in front of him. He looked up, his smile creasing small lines around his eyes. "You made it," he said, standing to pull out a chair for her. Vivian felt a touch awkward, unaccustomed to such casual chivalry. She placed the jacket on the table, saying quickly, "Thanks again. I didn't want to keep your stuff." Eli shrugged, sliding the jacket toward himself but not picking it up. "It looks better on you than me. Keep it a few more days, no big deal." He ordered a latte for her without asking, as if sensing she needed something warm. Vivian sat, cradling the latte, its heat soothing the lingering chill in her chest. "I'm Vi," she said, choosing a short, harmless name. She didn't want to be Vivian Grant, not today. They started talking, at first just small talk. Eli shared about his neighborhood on Seattle's outskirts, where neighbors still brought each other cookies and held weekend barbecues. "Out there, people don't pretend to be someone they're not," he said, his eyes lighting up. "If you need a pipe fixed or just want a beer, someone's always got your back." Vivian listened, surprised by how he spoke of life with such simple appreciation. She was used to tense boardrooms, where everyone wore masks to claw for power. Eli's world sounded like a fairy tale, beautiful, but hard to believe. Sounds peaceful, she said, her tone tinged with skepticism. Eli tilted his head as if catching something in her response. Peaceful, but not perfect. I just think everyone deserves a new day, you know? No matter how bad yesterday was. His words touched a raw spot deep inside Vivian, where she'd locked away her pain. She looked down at her latte, afraid. That meeting his eyes would reveal how much she was trembling inside. Eli didn't press her to share about herself. He just talked more about his computer repair job, about the time he accidentally wiped a client's hard drive because he forgot to back it up, and how he learned that mistakes weren't the end. Vivian laughed, her first real laugh in weeks, and it startled her. You seem forgiving, she said, unsure if she meant him or herself. Eli shrugged. Maybe, or I just don't like holding on to things that weigh me down. The conversation lasted longer than Vivian planned. She lost track of time, ignoring her phone buzzing in her bag. When Eli stepped away to grab another glass of water, she finally checked her messages. A text from Claire, her old assistant, popped up. Vivian, you need to come back to G-Tech. Michael's screwing everything up. Don't let all your work go to waste. Vivian gripped the phone, feeling an invisible hand pulling her back to her old world, where she'd been a queen, but also a prisoner. She turned the phone off, stuffed it in her bag, and decided that today she didn't want to be Vivian Grant. She wanted to be sixth. Just for a little while. When Eli returned, he didn't ask about the fleeting tension on her face. He simply slid a small plate of cookies across the table. You should try these. My neighbor Helen made them. She says cookies can fix anything, except broken computers. Vivian smiled, took a bite, and in that moment she felt lighter, as if the world wasn't pressing down so hard on her shoulders anymore. When they left the shop, the sky had cleared. Eli held the jacket but handed it back to her. Keep it one more day. I'm not in a hurry. Vivian started to protest, then nodded, clutching the jacket to her chest. Thanks, Eli, she said, saying his name for the first time. The sound made her heart stir faintly. He waved, walking off toward the road leading to the suburbs, leaving Vivian standing there, curious about this man, and about herself, the version of her who wanted to linger in this little neighborhood just a bit longer. Vivian stood in the middle of her newly rented apartment, the faint smell of old paint and damp wood lingering in the air. It was on the second floor of a 3-story building in a Seattle suburb, where maple trees blazed red each fall, and the sound of children playing echoed from the backyard. It was a far cry from the lavish penthouse she'd once shared with Michael. No floor-to-ceiling glass windows, no assistant knocking each morning, just a single bed, a chipped wooden table, and a tiny kitchen corner with a kettle that hummed noisily. But that simplicity let her breathe easier, as if she were shedding a skin that no longer fit. She opened her laptop, fingers gliding over the keyboard, and started writing. Journey from Ashes, she named the anonymous blog. No profile picture, no personal details. The first words poured out like a flood, about losing everything, sleepless nights, the fear she'd never find herself again. She didn't expect anyone to read it. She just needed a place to release the fragments of her heart. When she hit publish, she closed the laptop, feeling a slight relief. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. Vivian startled, wary. She wasn't used to unannounced visitors. Through the peephole, she saw Eli, holding a small toolbox and a foil-covered plate of cookies. She opened the door, managing a polite smile. Hi, what are you doing here? Eli shrugged, his familiar smile easing the air. Heard your outlet's busted. Mrs. Helen told me to check it out. Oh, and these are her cookies. She doesn't let anyone go hungry. He handed her the plate, the warm scent of cinnamon and vanilla making her stomach rumble. Eli stepped inside, quickly locating the burnt outlet in the kitchen. He worked neatly, fixing it while recounting the time he overconfidently wrecked Mrs. Helen's entire lighting system. Vivian leaned against the doorway, smiling despite herself. Something about Eli, his effortless sincerity, made her want to listen, though she kept her distance. When he finished, she offered him a glass of water, and they sat at the kitchen table sharing the cookies. Who's this Mrs. Helen, so thoughtful? Vivian asked. Eli grinned. She's like the neighborhood mom. Taught school for 30 years. Now retired, but still looks after everyone. You should meet her. Vivian didn't plan to agree, but when Mrs. Helen appeared at the door, her eyes twinkling behind round glasses, Vivian couldn't say no. Vi, right? I'm teaching painting to the kids at the community center tonight. Come help out. They love new faces. Vivian shook her head, claiming she wasn't good with kids, but Mrs. Helen's warm gaze made her nod, reluctantly. That evening, the community center, an old brick building with weathered walls, glowed with light. Kids ran around the room, hands smeared with paint. Vivian stood in a corner, awkward with a brush in hand, until a 7-year-old girl with 2 braids tugged at her shirt. "Miss, help me draw my dream house." The girl, Mia, spoke with bubbling excitement. Vivian knelt, helping Mia paint a small house with a chimney and a flower garden. Mia shared that she wanted a home always warm, where no one fights. Her innocent words struck Vivian, stirring memories of the days she'd dreamed of a home, before ambition and Michael swallowed that dream. When the class ended, Mia hugged Vivian, whispering, "You draw so good. Come back tomorrow, okay?" Vivian smiled, her heart softening a fraction. She glanced around, spotting Eli at the door stacking chairs with Mrs. Helen. He caught her eye, giving a thumbs up as if in praise. Vivian looked away, shy, but couldn't deny the warmth spreading inside her. Walking home, she thought of Mia, Mrs. Helen, this neighborhood where people treated her kindly without needing to know who she was. Yet fear lingered, whispering that opening her heart would only lead to more hurt. The next morning, Vivian opened her laptop, intending to write another blog post. She froze when she saw her first post had over 200 views with a few comments from strangers. "Thanks for speaking for me. Don't give up." An anonymous user had shared it on an online forum, making it spread quickly. Vivian shut the laptop, heart pounding. She was thrilled her words were heard, but anxious. If someone recognized her as Vivian Grant, everything could collapse. One weekend afternoon, golden sunlight spilled across the neighborhood. Vivian stood in Mrs. Helen's backyard, awkwardly wielding a small shovel as Eli guided her. They were helping replant a tulip bed, a task Vivian never imagined herself doing. Dirt clung to her fingernails, but she didn't complain. Eli, beside her, in a rolled-up t-shirt, worked while recounting the time he mistakenly grew cucumbers instead of tomatoes. "I'm no farmer, Vi, but at least I try," he said, winking. Vivian laughed, the sound so clear it surprised even her. They rested under an oak tree, sharing a bottle of cold water. Vivian spoke of her college days when she dreamed of building an app to help people with disabilities communicate. "I thought I could change the world," she said, her voice tinged with regret. She stopped, afraid that saying more might slip into G-Tech. Eli looked at her, his gaze gentle. "You still can, Vi. Good ideas don't die." His words were simple, but made her want to believe, even just a little. As the sun set, Eli pulled a steel thermos from his bag and handed it to her. "This is for you. I noticed you like iced tea. This'll help." Vivian took it, her fingers tracing the engraving. "Faith comes back one step at a time." She looked up, eyes misty with emotion. "How did you know I needed this?" she whispered. Eli shrugged, smiling softly. "Just a hunch." Her smile then, natural, unguarded, made Eli's heart skip. He told himself to slow down, that she probably saw him only as a friend. That night, Vivian sat in her apartment, clutching the thermos, writing a new blog post about finding light in small things. She didn't know that in downtown Seattle, Michael was reading an article about an anonymous blog going viral, its descriptions sparking his suspicion. Vivian laughed, her cheeks flushed from heat and something simpler, a joy she hadn't known in years. After the meal, she followed Eli to the back of the community center, where a weathered wall begged for a fresh coat of paint. Eli handed her a brush, his eyes twinkling mischievously. "Ready to be an artist?" Vivian arched a brow, holding the brush like a pen in a boardroom. "I'm better at negotiating than painting, Eli." He laughed, dipping his brush in blue. "Negotiate later. Just slap some paint on. No one's judging." They worked side by side, soft country tunes humming from an old radio. When Vivian accidentally splattered paint on Eli's shirt, he retaliated with a bold blue streak across her cheek. She yelped, pretending to be outraged, before they both burst into laughter, chasing each other around paint cans like children. Later, resting on the steps with their clothes speckled like abstract art, Vivian sighed. Her heart felt light, dangerously light. "You make me feel 18 again," she murmured, a note of surprise in her voice. Eli looked at her with a gentle smile. "Good, right? 18's got no big worries." Their conversation turned quieter. Eli opened up about Sarah, the woman who left him for someone with more ambition. "She said I was too ordinary," he said, not bitter, just matter of fact. "But I like ordinary. It's real." Vivian listened, a part of her stirring painfully. She wanted to tell him the truth, but instead, she told a half story. "I had a friend once, betrayed by someone she loved. She lost everything she built. Now, she doesn't know who to trust." Eli placed a hand on her shoulder, light, steady. "She'll find someone she can trust. She just has to let herself." His words made her want to cry, but she only nodded, afraid more would unravel her. She loved these moments, the brightness of days with Eli, the gentle rhythm of this neighborhood. But fear loomed. If he knew she was Vivian Grant, would he still look at her the same? That evening, Vivian checked her blog journey from ashes. Her breath caught. Thousands of views. Comments poured in. "Your post made me cry. Keep going. You're not alone." Her blog had become a phenomenon, shared across forums, passed around like a lifeline. Vivian shut the laptop, her heart racing. She wanted to keep writing, but feared the spotlight would find her again, shattering this fragile sanctuary. Mrs. Helen's backyard glowed with paper lanterns strung on ropes, twinkling like stars against the suburban Seattle sky. The weekend BBQ turned the block into one big family. Smoky grilled meat mingled with roasted sweet potatoes and bursts of laughter. Vivian stood by the food table, lemonade in hand, smiling as Mia darted past with a plate of cornbread, her cheeks smudged with crumbs. In her pale yellow sweater and jeans, her hair simply tied, Vivian looked nothing like the CEO once splashed across tabloids. And for the first time in years, she felt like she belonged. No titles, no boardrooms. Just Vi, the new neighbor. Mrs. Helen paused beside her, resting a warm hand on her shoulder. "You're brightening this place up, Vi." Vivian flushed, glancing at the yard. Eli stood at the grill, sleeves rolled up, flipping meat with quiet confidence. He caught her gaze and smiled, a soft, sincere thing that made her heart stutter. She turned away, telling herself they were just friends, just neighbors. Seeking refuge from the flutter in her chest, she stepped into the kitchen for more napkins. The door creaked open. Tom, Eli's best friend, walked in holding a beer, his hair tousled from the breeze. He squinted at her. "Hey, Vi, you look really familiar." Vivian's smile faltered. Tom took a sip of beer, then spoke louder. Too loud. "You look exactly like Vivian Grant. You know, the G-Tech CEO? The one who had that crazy divorce?" Time stopped. The laughter outside fell into silence. Only the sizzle of meat and the pounding of Vivian's heart remained. Her lemonade glass felt suddenly heavy, like it might shatter in her hand. She turned. Eli stood at the door, hands still red from the grill, hanging limp at his sides. His green eyes met hers. First confused, then something deeper. Hurt. "Is Tom right?" he asked, voice low but sharp. Every eye turned to her. Mrs. Helen froze, knife mid-chop. Mia clutched her cornbread, watching. The neighbors she'd grown to love looked at her with wide eyes and wary curiosity. Vivian wanted to run, like she had in every boardroom, when the pressure got too real. But this time, she stayed. She inhaled slowly. Her chest expanded. "Yes," she said. "I'm Vivian Grant." Silence dropped like a stone. Eli said nothing. He just stared, searching for the woman who painted with him, who laughed and shared cookies and memories. Not the one from headlines. Tom rubbed the back of his neck, mumbling an apology, realizing too late he'd broken something precious. Vivian's voice shook. "I didn't mean to hide it forever. I wanted to be Vi first." Eli nodded slightly, but his eyes wrestled with disappointment. He turned back to the grill. Vivian stood frozen, the thread between them stretched taut, ready to snap. Then Mrs. Helen stepped forward and gently took her hand. "Truth is hard at first," she said, but it'll lead you where you need to be. Vivian nodded, but inside she wasn't sure if truth was enough. As the party wound down, the lanterns dimmed and neighbors trickled out. A sleek black car pulled up to Mrs. Helen's house, headlights cutting through the dusk. Claire stepped out, Vivian's former assistant, her black dress severe against the cozy backdrop. "Vivian," she said, skipping greetings, "you need to come back to Seattle. G-Tech is collapsing. Michael says only you can save it." She eyed the yard with disdain. Balloons, scattered plates, cornbread crumbs. Her voice dripped with judgment. "Don't throw everything away for this." Vivian froze, the lemonade glass ice cold in her hand. Her old world, boardrooms, contracts, camera flashes, came crashing back. She looked at Claire, then at Eli, still at the grill, quietly wiping down the counter. He hadn't said a word, but she knew. He was waiting, not for her answer to Claire, but for her answer to him, to Vi. The rain returned to Seattle, not torrential, just enough to blur the streetlights and shroud the neighborhood in a hush. Vivian sat on the floor of her small apartment, suitcase half packed. She didn't want to go, but she didn't know if she could stay. Eli's silence at the BBQ had cut deep. Maybe the connection they had was just an illusion. Her phone buzzed again. Reporters, strangers. Her blog had been unmasked. A headline read, "Former G-Tech CEO behind anonymous blog. Where is Vivian Grant now?" She powered the phone off. A message from Michael still echoed in her mind. "Just your name, Vivian. Come back. Be the face of G-Tech. Don't let emotions ruin what we built." It sounded like an invitation, but Vivian knew better. It was a trap dressed in nostalgia. And this time she wasn't sure which part of her, the CEO or the woman with paint on her cheeks, would win. That healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about giving the future a chance. And with Eli, every piece of that future felt possible. As autumn settled more firmly into the neighborhood, Beacon grew from scribbled notes to a viable dream. Vivian began hosting small focus groups at the center, welcoming people of all walks. Divorced dads, widowed mothers, heartbroken students, all drawn by the same quiet hope. To be seen, to be heard, to not be alone. Eli stayed close, sometimes helping set up chairs, other times just sitting in the back, always cheering the loudest when someone found their voice. He'd tease her with grins and coffee mugs that read things like "World's okayest tech support" or "Coding is sexy," and Vivian would laugh every time, feeling a kind of joy she hadn't known she'd missed. One evening, as they packed up after a session, the scent of cinnamon rolls lingering from Mrs. Helen's generous baking, Eli paused and looked at her. Not with the dazed awe from their early days, but with something deeper, steadier. "You really saved this place," he said. "But more than that, you saved yourself. And somehow, you saved me too." Vivian set down a stack of pamphlets, walking toward him with a gentle smile. "We saved each other, Eli. You just happened to be the first one who believed I was worth saving." He reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Vi." I never stopped. The community center lights dimmed behind them, and hand in hand they stepped into the golden hush of dusk, the streets damp with the remnants of a short autumn rain. The same kind of rain that had once washed her fears clean. Vivian glanced up at the clouds parting over the suburb, then at the man who had taught her that love didn't have to be loud. It just had to be real. Beacon would be her legacy. But Eli was her home. Eli wasn't just the man she loved. He was the partner who made her believe she could make a difference. But not everything was smooth. The media hadn't let go of Vivian since her blog Journey from Ashes was exposed. Reporters kept calling. Some even lurked near the neighborhood. Cameras hunting for the former CEO Vivian Grant. A recent article dubbed her the runaway CEO, peppered with cruel commentary suggesting she was playing humble for public sympathy. The piece infuriated Vivian, but deeper still was the fear that this attention might harm her project in the neighborhood she cherished. She tossed her phone on the table and sighed. "They don't get it, Eli. Beacon isn't a stunt or PR. It's my heart. They don't get to define you, Vi. This is your idea from your heart, and I'm here, no matter what. Eli rested a hand on her shoulder, his voice low and steady. His words were like a cool breeze easing the pressure. But the challenges didn't end with the media. That morning, an email from G-Tech's lawyers arrived. They demanded she sign a non-disclosure agreement, implying they'd sue if she used any ideas from her CEO days. Vivian knew this was Michael's doing, her ex-husband trying again to pull her back into his shadow. "They think they can control me forever," she said, her voice edged with bitterness. She knew she had to do something bigger to break free from the past. That night in her small apartment, she opened her laptop and wrote a new blog post. This time, not anonymously. "I am Vivian Grant," she began, "and this is my real story of failure, pain, and how I found myself again through the kindness of strangers." She wrote of the rainy night at the bus stop, of the neighborhood that welcomed her, of the man who gave her a jacket, not naming Eli but letting love shine through every line. She wrote about Beacon, her dream to help others find light as she had. When she hit publish, she trembled, not from fear, but from freedom. The post spread like wildfire. Thousands of comments poured in from strangers saying her story gave them hope. One afternoon, as Vivian and Eli checked the progress at the community center, now with a new classroom and playground, a figure appeared at the door. Claire, Vivian's former assistant, stood there, no longer sharp-edged and corporate. She wore a simple coat, her eyes hesitant. "Vivian, I read your blog," Claire said. "I was wrong to push you back to G-Tech. I see what you're doing with Beacon, and I want to help, if you'll let me." Vivian was stunned. She'd thought Claire had chosen Michael, become part of the world she left behind. But now she saw something new in her, sincerity, as if Claire, too, was trying to rewrite her wrongs. After a long silence, Vivian nodded. "Thank you, Claire. I could really use someone like you." Claire smiled, eyes bright with relief. From then on, she became an unexpected ally. She brought her expertise, interface design, and media strategy to Beacon. She worked closely with Vivian, making the app more user-friendly and even recruiting volunteer psychologists. Eli teased that Claire was V's more serious twin, making all three laugh. They worked tirelessly, lively meetings at the community center, late nights in Vivian's apartment fueled by Mrs. Helen's cookies. Eli rallied volunteers. Tom wired the electrical system. Mia designed a lighthouse logo. The project became a community effort. Vivian felt her confidence return, not the arrogant power of a CEO, but the grounded belief in creating change from the heart. One evening, as they sat on the center's steps, the horizon ablaze with sunset, Eli looked at her, voice full of quiet pride. "You're doing something huge, Vi. I'm proud to be part of it." Vivian took his hand, heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you, Eli. You're my lighthouse." He smiled, pulling her close, and they sat there, basking in the peace of a journey just beginning to bloom. Seattle's largest tech conference unfolded inside a gleaming convention center, its glass walls glittering under city lights. Hundreds gathered, from startup founders to seasoned investors. Vivian stood on stage in a simple blue dress, her black hair loose and natural. No trace remained of the Ice Queen who once ran G-Tech. She wasn't here to flaunt achievements or reclaim fame. She was here to tell a story. Beacon's story. Her story. In the front row, Eli sat in Tom's borrowed suit, tight at the shoulders but not dimming his radiant smile. He had never seen Vivian shine like this. Not from power, but from living true to her heart. Vivian took a deep breath, eyes sweeping the crowd. Then she began. "I used to think power was everything," she said, voice warm and clear. "Shares, reputation, numbers on a balance sheet. That was my world. But a year ago, I stood shivering in the rain, having lost it all. My company, my trust, myself." She paused. "Then someone gave me a jacket. For no reason but kindness. That's real power." She looked at Eli. He nodded, his eyes saying what words couldn't. Vivian spoke of the neighborhood that became home, of Mrs. Helen's healing cookies, of Mia's drawings, of Beacon, born to help others find light after darkness. "Beacon isn't just an app," she said, passion in every syllable. "It's proof that everyone deserves a new day, no matter how painful their past." She ended with a truth she'd fought hard to learn. Happiness isn't at the peak of power. It's in small things, a hug, a smile, someone holding your hand when you fall. The room fell silent. Then thunderous applause. Beacon hadn't even launched yet, but it already had a movement behind it. What moved Vivian most were the letters. Hundreds from strangers saying her story gave them courage to move on after divorce, loss, or depression. As she stepped down, Eli met her first, wrapping her in a tight hug. "You were amazing," he whispered, voice thick. Vivian smiled, cheeks flushed. "We were amazing, Eli." A week later, the community center officially reopened. The once run-down building now gleamed. A banner read, "Calm, community is home." A vibrant playground and counseling classroom stood proudly beside it. Reporters came, curious about the neighborhood that inspired Vivian Grant's game-changing platform. Mrs. Helen, in her floral apron, cut the ribbon and beamed. "I told you this neighborhood was special," she declared, drawing laughter. Mia raced across the lawn, blue balloon in hand. "Miss Vi, Uncle Eli, this is our new home," she shrieked, tugging them toward her lighthouse painting. Claire stood nearby, eyes shining with pride. "You've changed everything, Vivian. I'm glad to be part of it." Vivian squeezed her hand. "We did it together, Claire." Eli led her to a yard filled with laughter. Tom arguing over grilling, Mrs. Helen telling stories, kids darting through puddles. He looked at it all, then winked. "Who knew a jacket would lead to this?" Vivian laughed, resting her head on his shoulder. "You didn't just give me a jacket, Eli. You gave me a world." The sun dipped low, bathing the neighborhood in golden light. The community center glowed behind them, a true lighthouse. They didn't need words, they just held hands, knowing they'd found everything they were missing. Tucked in Vivian's pocket was a letter draft from a publisher. They wanted to turn her blog into a book. But today, she just wanted to live this moment, with Eli, with her family, with the neighborhood that changed her life. "You're 5 minutes late," Vivian teased, tilting her umbrella to shield him. Eli shrugged, his eyes twinkling. "Had to make sure everything was perfect." She frowned, not quite understanding, but her heart skipped a beat as he gently took her hand and pulled her from under the umbrella. Light rain dotted their shoulders, but Vivian didn't care. There was something in his gaze, tender, resolute, that made her forget the chill. Eli took a deep breath, as if gathering all his courage. "Vi," he began, his voice low but steady. "A year ago, I saw you standing here, shivering. I didn't know who you were, just that I couldn't walk by without doing something. I gave you my jacket, thinking it was just a small gesture. Turns out it was the biggest moment of my life." Vivian's eyes stung, but she smiled, squeezing his hand to encourage him to continue. Without warning, he knelt right there on the wet pavement, rain streaking down his face. He pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple silver ring. No gemstones, just an intricate wave-like engraving. "The first time I met you, you were shaking from the cold," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Today, I want to keep you warm for life. Vivian Grant, will you marry me?" Vivian froze, the rain mingling with tears on her cheeks. She had once thought love was a fragile luxury, but Eli, with his unwavering kindness and presence through every trial, had shown her that love could be the simplest and strongest thing. She nodded, her voice caught in her throat. Then she laughed, pulling him up as he stood and wrapped her in his arms. "Yes, Eli. Yes." His hands trembled with joy as he slid the ring onto her finger. Together they stood in the rain, laughing like children, heedless of the water soaking their clothes. Vivian rested her head on Eli's chest, hearing his steady heartbeat, feeling the world shrink to just them. "I worried the ring wasn't fancy enough," he said, a note of concern in his voice. Vivian shook her head, kissing his cheek. "It's perfect because you chose it." The rain kept falling, but this time it felt like a new beginning, fresh with possibility. Hand in hand, they left the bus stop, Eli leading her to the community center. "Mrs. Helen wants to talk about Beacon," he said, though Vivian had no idea what was in store. When they stepped inside, lights flared, and a chorus of voices shouted, "Congratulations!" The entire neighborhood was there. Mrs. Helen, Tom, Mia, Claire, and dozens of others, gathered around a long table laden with cookies, cornbread, and a homemade cake inscribed with "Forever Together." Vivian stood frozen, turning to Eli, who was grinning ear to ear. "Told Mrs. Helen last week," he whispered. "She couldn't wait." Mrs. Helen swooped in and hugged Vivian so tightly that it made her laugh. "Knew that boy would pull it off," she said, her eyes sparkling. "You're our neighborhood's greatest gift, Vi." Tom slapped Eli on the shoulder, handing him a beer. "Took you long enough. I bet you would have waited another year." Mia rushed up, hugging Vivian's legs. "Miss Vi's gonna wear the prettiest wedding dress, right?" Vivian knelt down, ruffling Mia's hair. "Absolutely, but only if you help me pick it." The party stretched late into the evening, filled with the sounds of country music from an old radio and lively conversations. Claire, now Vivian's close friend, raised a glass and said, "Beacon wouldn't be here without their love." Vivian held Eli's hand, feeling the cool ring on her finger, knowing that she hadn't just found herself, but a family, a true home. As the guests trickled out, Vivian and Eli stood in the yard under the last glowing lanterns. The rain had stopped, and the stars twinkled above them. "I never thought I could be this happy," Vivian said, leaning into him. Eli kissed her forehead, whispering, "Me neither, Vi." "I'll do everything to keep that smile on your face." Wrapped in each other, they stood, joy overflowing, knowing they'd face whatever life threw their way, together. Spring 2026 bathed Seattle in golden light, as if the city itself were blessing Vivian and Eli's big day. The community center, once a weathered shell, now pulsed with life. Freshly painted walls, blooming tulip gardens, and a playground filled with children's laughter. Today it hosted their simple, heartfelt wedding, adorned with white ribbons on the trees, and long tables filled with cornbread, cookies, and flowers prepared by Mrs. Helen and their neighbors. Vivian stood in a small room behind the center, wearing a knee-length white dress chosen with 8-year-old Mia's eager help. Claire adjusted the thin veil in her hair, smiling. "You look stunning, Vivian. Eli's going to faint." Vivian laughed, grasping Claire's hand. "Thanks for being here, for everything." Mia burst in, clutching a bundle of wild daisies. "Miss Vi, it's time." Mrs. Helen, officiating, stood between them. "Today, we're here to witness the love of two people who've made this neighborhood a bigger family." Eli went first, his voice steady as he recited his vows. "Vi, I promise to always be the one to give you my jacket, rain or shine, good days or bad. I promise to love you, respect you, and make you laugh every day." Vivian smiled, her eyes misty with joy. "Eli, you showed me what love is. Home, hope. I promise to stand by you, share every dream, and keep you warm, just as you've done for me." They exchanged rings. Eli's simple silver band now paired with one for Vivian, engraved with "One step at a time," a nod to their journey. As Mrs. Helen pronounced them married, Eli pulled Vivian into a kiss amidst cheers and applause. Mia tossed daisies into the air, Tom whistled, and Claire wiped tears, whispering to Mrs. Helen, "I've never seen her this happy." The reception brimmed with laughter, and tables overflowed with neighborhood dishes, from Mrs. Helen's pumpkin soup to Tom's cornbread. Country music played, and Eli pulled Vivian to dance, admitting he only knew basic steps. She laughed as he spun her, her dress flaring. "You're a terrible dancer," she teased. "But I love this terrible dancer," he replied, kissing her forehead. Vivian looked around, Mia sketching a wedding gift, Claire chatting with Tom, Mrs. Helen hugging everyone like a mother. This neighborhood wasn't just where she found Eli, but where she found family. A year ago, she thought she'd lost everything. Now she had more than she'd ever dreamed. As the afternoon waned and the guests left, Vivian and Eli walked to the Pine Avenue bus stop where it all began. Warm sunlight shone down. No rain, just the gentle breath of spring. They sat on the old plastic bench, hands clasped, their rings glinting. "Did you ever think we'd get here?" Vivian asked, resting her head on his shoulder. Eli smiled, stroking her hair. "Number. But that night I gave you my jacket, I knew I wanted to see you again." Vivian pulled a newly published book from her bag, its cover reading Journey from Ashes, with her name, Vivian Grant, in bold. Her blog had become a book, selling thousands and inspiring millions worldwide. She opened the first page where she had written, "To Eli, who gave me a new day." Eli read it, his eyes shining, then pulled her into a hug. "You make me proud every day, Vi." They sat in the warm sun, watching buses pass, saying nothing more. Words weren't needed. They'd found each other. Love, a vow to endure. In the distance, the neighborhood echoed with children's laughter, a song of hope, their journey complete and radiant. Thank you for following this heartfelt story of Soul Stories channel. Share your thoughts in the comments below if you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways. Don't forget to like and share this story with your friends. To never miss out on touching, meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone. Let's cherish the beautiful moments of life and love.